Take one slow breath before you hear this, because this is not a light message and it did not rise to the surface by accident. It came through silence, through distance, through nights where someone tried to act normal while something heavy kept pressing on their chest, and now that weight is no longer staying quiet. There is something your person has been holding back for a long time, and the reason it feels urgent now is simple. They can feel you slipping farther out of reach. Not in a loud way, not with drama, in a quiet, steady way that scares them more than any fight ever could. They kept telling themselves there would be more time, another day, a better moment, a safer opening. But that story is breaking apart now. Something in them knows they may have waited too long, and once that truth enters the heart, it changes everything fast. So stay with me, because what they would say to you if fear was not blocking their mouth is deeper than apology and heavier than regret. This is the kind of message that arrives when someone finally understands that silence was never harmless, distance was never neutral, and losing you may become real in a way they cannot undo later. There is a person in your life who has been carrying hidden feelings for much longer than they ever wanted to admit, longer than you guessed, longer than they can comfortably face. They did not wake up one morning and suddenly stop caring. They did not move on as easily as their behavior may have made it seem. What really happened was slower, quieter, and far more confusing inside them than what you saw on the outside. They pushed things down because they did not know what else to do. They buried emotions under routine, under silence, under pride, under the hope that if they ignored it long enough, it would lose its power. But buried feelings do not disappear. They grow heavier. They settle deeper. They wait. Then one day, they rise all at once. That is where this message is coming from now. Not from peace, not from full courage, not from someone who suddenly figured everything out. It is coming from pressure, fear, and the painful realization that too much time may have passed while they stood still. If this feels like it is speaking directly to your situation, keep listening. Because the truth is, they did not protect themselves by staying silent. They only delayed the moment when everything hidden would return with more force than before, and now that moment is here. Something shifted inside them recently, and it hit hard. Maybe they saw something that reminded them of you. Maybe they heard your name when they were not expecting it. Maybe life finally became quiet enough for the truth to be louder than all the distractions they had been using to drown it out. Whatever caused it, the effect was the same. They were shaken. The safe place they had built inside themselves suddenly stopped feeling safe. One thought landed with full weight and would not go away. They may really lose you. Not for a day, not for a phase, for real. That thought did not come gently. It did not arrive at a time when they could brush it aside and stay busy. It came late, in stillness, in those empty hours when the phone feels too quiet, when other people feel far away, when ordinary noise no longer keeps the deeper questions away. That is when the truth started pressing in. Nobody else held space the way you did. Nobody else listened the same way. Nobody else understood what they meant before they could fully explain it. Nobody else gave comfort without making it feel forced or heavy. And the second that became clear to them, urgency started building. Not clean urgency made only of love. A more complicated kind. Love mixed with fear. Missing mixed with panic. Regret mixed with the dread of discovering too late that what they had with you was rare. If they could speak without pride, interrupting every honest sentence, they would say something very plain. They should have done more. They should have done it sooner. They thought there was more time than there really was. They thought your care would remain in place no matter how long they delayed. They thought your patience meant endless waiting. Only now are they seeing that silence has weight. Silence does damage. Silence is not the same as harmless space. Doing nothing is still a choice, and choices leave marks. They carry guilt for not being there when their presence mattered. They carry guilt for avoiding the hard talks when truth was the one thing that might have helped. They carry guilt for keeping their heart locked while expecting your heart to stay open. Back then, distance felt easier, safer, more manageable. Avoiding things felt like control. But avoidance never removes pain. It only postpones it and lets it gather strength. That is the part they understand now. They are not struggling because they feel too little. They are struggling because they feel more than they know how to hold. Opening up would have meant risk. It would have meant being seen. It would have meant hearing an answer they could not control, and instead of choosing that risk, they chose silence. Now silence is choosing their lesson for them, and it is a hard one. What makes this heavier is that they can feel you are not the same anymore. Your energy changed. Your response changed. Even your silence feels different now. You may still care on some level, but you are no longer chasing clarity. You are no longer standing in the same painful place begging for honesty or hoping things will suddenly become clear. You are no longer building your emotional world around their confusion. That unsettles them deeply. Why? Because they leaned on your patience more than they should have. They leaned on your softness while keeping themselves guarded. Somewhere inside, they assumed you would always be there, understanding, waiting, making room for their hesitation. They never truly believed you would reach a point where you quietly turned back toward yourself and chose peace over confusion. But you did, and they can feel it. That quiet shift in you speaks louder than any argument. It tells them something has changed in a way words cannot easily reverse. Stay with me here, because this matters. What they fear losing is not only you as a person. They fear losing the one place where they felt deeply seen without being judged too quickly. They fear losing the emotional safety they relied on without fully admitting it. They fear losing the rare space where they could be understood without being forced before they were ready. Now, they are beginning to understand something they avoided before. Not every bond can be rebuilt once it is stretched too far. Not every connection comes back just because someone finally feels sorry. Not every door stays open forever. This understanding follows them everywhere now. It shows up in quiet moments. It rises when they try to move forward and feel nothing solid under their feet. It returns every time they compare someone else to you and feel the difference instantly. That is why the urgency keeps growing. It is not only about wanting to reach you, it is about realizing time is no longer unlimited. They can feel a door moving toward closure, not with anger, not with loud final words, quietly, softly. And that kind of closing is the most serious kind, because when a heart closes without noise, it usually does not swing open again so easily. They want to reach out, they want to explain, they want to say something real for once. They want to offer an apology that carries weight and not just excuses. But fear blocks every attempt. Fear asks if it is already too late. Fear whispers that maybe you do not care in the same way anymore. Fear tells them that if they finally show their real self, they may face a rejection they can no longer hide from, so they hesitate. They write messages in their mind and erase them before they exist. They rehearse conversations that never happen. They loop through every possible outcome, then do nothing again. While they keep delaying, the pressure inside them keeps building. This is not a promise that everything will suddenly become perfect. It is not a fantasy where one emotional message repairs everything that silence damaged. It is closer to a confession made from a distance, a confession they may not even be brave enough to speak directly yet. They know the damage is real, they know they do not have every answer, but inside themselves they are finally admitting one thing clearly: treating you like you would always be there was wrong. They did not understand your value while they still had easy access to you. They understood it when the space where you once stood started feeling empty. And when truth arrives this late, it hurts more because it comes with loss already attached. But what this means for you matters more than what it means for them. Listen carefully to this part. This is not asking you to wait. It is not telling you to forgive before your heart is ready. It is not pushing you back into pain you already survived once. It is only revealing what they failed to show through action. You mattered more than they said. Your absence is louder to them now than your presence ever seemed when you were there. What you shared was real, even if they handled it badly. But real feeling does not erase poor choices, and regret by itself is not the same as readiness. The real power now belongs to you and to what you choose next. Real power does not move just because someone else is panicking. Desperation does not always mean growth. A person can feel intense loss and still not be capable of the kind of steady love that a real bond needs. Right now, they are sitting with the result of who they were when it mattered. Results are honest. They remove all the easy stories. They cut through the excuses. They show clearly what silence cost. They are replaying old moments now with a different set of eyes. Things that once felt small suddenly feel huge. They remember the little ways you cared without asking for credit. They remember how you checked in for no reason. They remember how you sensed their moods before they spoke. They remember how you kept trying to understand even when they pulled away. They remember that you wanted consistency, not perfection, presence, not grand promises, truth, not polished words. These memories press on them because they reveal something painful. You met them at a depth they had not yet reached inside themselves. You offered something real, and they answered it with hesitation. For a long time, they acted as if distance was safety, but now that same distance feels like exposure. They feel seen by you, even through the silence. And your silence no longer feels like a pause. It feels like you are truly moving forward. That is what scares them most. You are no longer arranging your life around their uncertainty. You are no longer waiting for them to become clear while you carry the emotional weight alone. They can sense that. And with that comes a deeper fear. Not only that you might reject them if they speak, but that they may no longer hold the same place in your life at all. They worry that you may have already closed the chapter calmly, without a fight, without a scene, without needing one last explanation. That kind of calm is frightening to someone who depended on your availability. Calm feels final in a way anger does not. Anger still has heat. Calm often means acceptance. Calm says you have stopped arguing with reality, and they do not know how to stand in front of that. They also know now that you never asked for something impossible. You did not demand perfection. You did not ask them to become someone else overnight. You asked them to show up, to be honest, to be present when it counted. And now they are forced to look at how many times they chose comfort when courage was required. They kept saying they were not ready. They found reasons. They told themselves later would be better. But readiness does not magically appear. It is a decision. And when love was in front of them asking for truth, they stepped back. That truth hurts now because the moment no longer feels the same. They can feel the change in you through everything, in your tone, in your pace, in the fact that you no longer explain your worth, in the quiet confidence that now sits where all the chasing used to live, that changes the whole landscape. They confused your patience with endless access. They mistook your care for permanent availability. They saw your gentleness and assumed it meant unlimited time. They forgot that patience has limits and that self-respect eventually rises. Now they are trapped in an inner tug-of-war. They want to reach toward you, but they fear starting something they cannot sustain. They want to apologize, but they fear saying words that actions will fail to support. They want the closeness back, but they also know closeness asks for steady effort, not emotional bursts. So they remain suspended between longing and avoidance. Their heart pulls one way while old habits pull the other. That is why their energy feels mixed, restless, uneven. One day, they want to be brave. Another day, they hide again. They imagine saying the right thing. They imagine becoming better. They imagine meeting you honestly at last. But imagining is easy. Living differently is hard. It asks for repeated action. It asks for change that lasts longer than one emotional moment. And deep down, they know words alone will not move you the way they once might have. You are no longer waiting to be convinced by language. You are watching for what is real. That does not mean your heart disappeared. It means you became stronger in a quiet way. You sat with sadness. You looked at the truth. You stopped filling empty spaces with false hope. You stopped hurting yourself to keep a connection alive by yourself. They are only now beginning to face the same process. That timing matters. Growing through loss feels very different from growing while love is still safely close. They know this, even if they cannot fully say it. They know that even if they come forward now, what once existed cannot simply return in the same shape. That frightens them, because what they miss most may be the version of you that trusted without holding back. And trust does not come back on command. Once it changes the whole bond. So now they stand at a doorway. Behind them is the old comfort of silence. Ahead of them is honesty without protection. If they stay still, they may lose you completely. If they step forward, they must face themselves and face the possibility that they are late. This is the real urgency they feel, not just reaching you, but facing the truth about who they have been. Loss is waking them up. Your strength is making it real. Your peace is making it impossible for them to keep hiding behind the old story that there was always more time. What you have been sensing is not random. It is not imaginary. It is a real shift under the surface. Loss does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it enters like a whisper, a small emotional withdrawal, a subtle change in presence, a calm that says the heart is no longer standing in the same place. They feel that whisper when they think about calling you. They feel it when they picture you moving ahead with peace instead of bitterness. They feel it when they realize they cannot charm their way past reality anymore. For the first time, they are seeing what fear has cost them. For a long time, they fought their own feelings for you. They fought openness. They fought vulnerability. They fought the responsibility that comes with something real. And now all that resistance has turned into pressure with nowhere to go. They are not only afraid of losing you, they are afraid of what losing you reveals about them. That this was never only bad timing. It was fear of being fully seen. Fear of falling short. Fear of not knowing how to hold something genuine without damaging it. They keep returning to those moments when they could have spoken and stayed silent. At the time, those moments felt minor. Now they feel heavy. Because they see clearly that you did not disappear suddenly. You slowly adjusted to what they were actually giving. You stopped doing the emotional work for two people. They also see something else now, and it unsettles them deeply. You did not shatter when they pulled away. You did not beg forever. You did not stay frozen. You found more of yourself. You protected your peace. And strangely, that has grown their respect for you. At the same time, it has increased their fear. They know they cannot come back casually. They know the old version of them is not enough. They know that if they return at all, it has to be with honesty and real change, not just emotion. That is why they feel unsteady. They do not want to show up as the same person who once hid behind walls, but they are not fully sure who they are without those walls. And that is the deeper crisis. They are waking up to themselves. They are seeing that you were not only someone they cared about, you were also a mirror. You showed them depth, courage, softness, and truth. Instead of looking deeply into that mirror, they turned away. Now, your absence has taken the mirror with it, and they feel the loss of that reflection. They feel cut off from a part of themselves they only touched through you. So yes, they miss you. But it goes deeper than simple missing. They are confronting who they became when fear was allowed to lead. And that confrontation is painful in a way few people know how to admit out loud. So if this message found you at the right time, hold on to the clearest truth inside it. Their urgency is real, but your peace is real too. Their regret may be deep, but your healing matters just as much. Their awakening does not erase your experience. Their fear does not obligate your return. The question is no longer only whether they feel the loss. The real question is whether anything solid, honest, and lasting can come from that loss now. That answer is not found in one message, one apology, or one emotional night. It is found in what is lived over time, in consistency, in courage, in action, in whether someone can finally meet truth without running from it again. And until that becomes clear, you do not need to rush. You do not need to open doors out of pity. You do not need to move because they are finally hearing the silence. Stay honest with yourself. Stay close to what your heart has already learned. Because in the end, the deepest message from them may be this: I cared more than I showed. I waited too long. I thought your heart would stay open forever. And now I am face to face with the painful truth that the one thing I kept postponing may have been the one thing that mattered most.